Live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Just Bernard Show. We are here again. It's another week. It's kind of a nice day here. I wish I was where I'm at, where it looks like I'm at behind me. It's a little gray outside, so I decided to make it sunny and beautiful on my broadcast. So anyway, I hope you all are having a great week. Let's see, what's been going on this last week? I won't go into current events. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on. But we are going to be talking a little bit about what's going on in the world, but not in a current events type of way, but in the way that we are perceiving current events, among other things in our life. Oh, I just saw a kitty go by me over here. Anyway, so, for those of you who are joining me on YouTube for the first time, I want to say welcome. I'm only broadcasting on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram right now. I'll be back on Facebook next month. They got mad at me for posting a cartoon, so now I'm not allowed to broadcast for 3 weeks for posting a cartoon. The cartoon was about, it was sarcasm toward this idea of, those challenges, or the ice bucket challenge and this and whatnot. Anyway, it was a sarcastic cartoon. They didn't like it, and they blocked me from streaming there for posting that cartoon, in case you're curious. So welcome to everybody on YouTube and on Instagram and on Twitter. I'm very glad that you're joining me today. Today we're going to be talking about the magic of duality, polarity, contrast, opposites. And I've been on a kick a little bit with universal laws. And I actually wasn't even going to start my whole universal law series. It's not going to be a series, but I want to start incorporating more of that into my broadcast. I was going to start that next week with the law of synchronicity, but I couldn't help but notice, I guess because of the law of synchronicity, I kept having these aha moments with the law of duality, the magic of duality, and where that all stems from. So I just want to peek in here and see who's on the chat, and I want to say hello to Muriel, Yahara, and Edward on YouTube. Hello, thank you for being here today, everybody. Thanks. Anyway, so as I said, today I wanted to talk about the magic of duality, polarity, contrast, and whatnot. And I'd like to start with a reading from my book. It's short, actually a couple of them. For those of you that haven't got my book yet, I don't know if you can see it. It's the Book of One. I have the promo copy. That's why it says not for resale, but you can get it on Amazon. Anyway, Chapter 2 is called The One. So let's start there. It says, "We are all part of one soul. Our souls are pieces of the one main soul, the source of all creation. You may call it God if you wish. Within our souls is everything God is, and so are our ultimate capabilities. All this is God's. We are able to achieve perfect goodness, and we are able to achieve perfect evil. Free will gives you the choice of which path to follow. Good brings happiness, and evil brings sorrow." And I'm going to go back to that near the end of today's talk. But as we move into today's talk, I'm going to read chapter 3 real quick to get us motivated. And chapter 3 is the wisdom of contrast. To be good, one must understand the ways of evil. To know happiness, one must understand sorrow. To truly live, one must accept death. For not knowing both sides, you will not truly understand the one. One creates all things, good and bad. So you must accept all things as one created them. Then you will understand the meaning of your soul's existence. So as I refer to my notes, I pulled up some information on the law of duality, and the law of duality basically states that everything is on a continuum and has a complementary opposite within the whole. When I first started studying the occult, magic, witchcraft, etc., one of the examples that was given to me about this was the embracing of polarity, the embracing of duality. If you get into studying Kabbalah or the Tarot or ceremonial magic or Western esotericism, you probably have seen the Tree of Life, or have at least seen the image of. I should have pulled up a slide for you. Sorry about that. You might have seen the emanations and how they all connect, starting with the Godhead coming down to the earth, and that image represents how everything comes from Keter, the crown, called God, goddess, source, the source of all things, where everything comes from. And then it splits into two, Benai and Hokmah, I believe. Benai being the feminine, Hokmah being the masculine, one linear, logical, one more intuitive. And that is the beginning of duality. That is the beginning of polarity. If you want to, you can look at the allegory of Adam and Eve and the fall from grace. Eve bit the apple, and all of a sudden she was able to see opposites. You could see that they were naked, and etc., etc. But that fall from grace is, again, an allegory or a great myth to explain how when we separate from that one unity consciousness, that one of everything, and that awareness of one, we're going into a lower dimension, not necessarily a bad one, just a different one, in order to experience our human experience, our human incarnation. And within that, there are, I don't want to say laws that govern your experience, and one of those happens to be the magic of duality, the law of duality, of contrast, of polarity. And as I was saying, when I was a young witchling, a baby witch, as they say nowadays, the way it was expressed to me, a great example, and I really like this example because it happens to go along with what's happening on the earth right now. That you can look at a forest fire and look at it with fear or anger and see it as evil and destructive and, all consuming and whatnot. Or you could look at it from a way of nature making way for rebirth. When the fire goes out, it clears away the brush, clears away the dead trees, the dead brush and whatnot, to allow the new little saplings to be able to come up. And so if you go back to an area where there's a wildfire, several months later, you're going to start seeing little green shoots coming up, new life coming up out of the ground. And I'm not going to go into, I'll just mention, I'm not going to go into climate change or anything. That's a whole other topic. I'm just talking about the polarity and the way that we perceive things. So what we see as negative in one sense can also be positive, depending on the way that you're looking at it. What happens in our human experience is we tend to judge these opposites. Yeah, like I just said, we judge it to be positive or we judge it to be negative, and they're basically the same thing. They're the two sides of the same coin. When we talk about, I'm bringing up weather again. Geez, I wonder if this is a theme here. When we talk about it being really hot outside, right now it's summer here where I'm at, and it's really hot. And I don't like summer. I don't like being hot. I moved out of Florida up into the mid-Atlantic to get away from the heat, but right now it's really hot here in Virginia. And we can see how, summer and winter are opposites, or we can look at it like hot and cold are opposites, but they're really the same thing. They're just two sides of the same coin of temperature. Hot is not hot because it's cold. Hot is hot because that's how we value and read temperature. The same thing with cold. The same way that we look at things that are going on in our life, we have a way, for some reason, we can't help but judge it to be good, bad, left or right, and the whole political spectrum of definite opposites, but nothing is a definite opposite. If we're honest with ourselves, nothing is a definite opposite at first glance. So what happens is we begin to create a problem. We begin to create this self-perpetuating problem within our lives because we don't acknowledge, we can't see that they are the two sides of the same coin. But bigger still, we cannot see, or we don't allow ourselves to see, in many cases, the varying degrees of extremes within them. For example, I always say this about, I'll use politics as an example. I always say, I know a lot of conservative people that happen to be very lovely, very kind, very compassionate people, and I know people on the other side of the spectrum that are actually very mean and cruel. So there is no absolute when it comes to these idea that we call, these extremes of left, right, up, down, and whatnot. And that's where we get into the problems, especially we're seeing it now within our society of this this duality, this extremism on either side of the spectrum, whereas in reality there are so many subtle layers within each of them. When we see things from only one perspective, we get into what I call a consciousness trap. And to me, a consciousness trap is something that we've created, a reality that we've created. Let's say some people could call it a morality, some people could call it a particular ethic within their life, and some people, for many people, it's just a story that we create in our life. And we get stuck in this consciousness trap of, okay, well, this is how I think, and this is how I live, and this is who I am, and we begin to identify with this consciousness trap, this story that we've created, this story of what reality is to us. And it kind of like, it creates a barrier, a ceiling, to where we can't rise up above it. That every time we try to push through it, it's going to stop us in our tracks and not allow our consciousness to expand, and it's not going to allow our spirit to evolve. So it's very important that we're aware of our thoughts and our thinking patterns when it comes to this. We can go into ego and all that stuff, but if you understand ego, then you kind of already understand that, ego creates these limitations. But duality and contrast and opposites and polarity are nothing more than a part of nature. Um, Again, a great example is the seasons. We have summer where it's hot. We have winter where it's cold. We have spring where life is coming, returning anew. And we have fall when things are starting to die. In our own lives, we have the circle of birth, of life, of death, of stagnation, calm, quiet, and then another rebirth. We have the eternal cycle of things. Life is not a straight line, it's a circle. There's a reason why we see so many of these ancient civilizations always had circles and spirals, and you always see like cave paintings and etc. with the spiral and or a circle somewhere. You don't see a straight line. I mean, as far as like art is concerned, it's not a straight line. And I bring this movie up, and I highly recommend it. And I know people probably laugh at the idea of Keanu Reeves playing Buddha, but if you haven't seen it, please watch it. It's really good. Little Buddha. And anyway, the reason why I brought that up right now is that when it comes to duality, the only way for us to, how do I say, harmonize both, and we're going to get into that. In that particular movie, he's playing Buddha, and it's the moment that Buddha kind of gets his, not when he's sitting under the Bodhi tree and finds enlightenment, that's of course at the end of the movie, but it's at the beginning of his path, and it shows him, I forgot if it was, he was watching someone play a string instrument, and he said, oh, well, if you loosen it too much, it won't play. If you tighten it too much, the string will snap. It's the middle way. It's the middle way. And so when we find that middle way between the two polar opposites, they can no longer rule us. They can no longer control us, or at least control our mind, control our emotions, and suppress our consciousness. I'm going to make a lot of TV references because I just thought of another one. And this is more on a personal note, which is probably why I brought up this particular topic for today. I was telling my best friend, I was like, I was having a little bit of anxiety last couple months ago. I was having some financial issues, and I was getting into that anxiety spiral that some of us go down when it comes to anxiety. And it was just like, the banking issue was like we always say the straw that broke the camel's back, but it was because I have the show, I have the 3 other organizations I work with, I have the clients that I take care of, I have friends that I want to see and spend time with, I have animals I take care of. It was like my plate floweth over, and it was like this financial issue hit, and I was like, oh, that's it, and I started spiraling out and going into anxiety. And once I composed myself and grounded myself again, I acknowledged that, for me, it's overexcitement gets me anxious, because I've got so many irons in the fire that when I get overexcited or overstimulated, that's when I start to get anxiety. And I was like, you know what? I think I saw that on a Simpsons episode where Marge is like, oh, Homer, calm down. You know how you get when you get overexcited. Anyway, I just had to laugh because I thought of that. And it was a great way of me modeling how I see this law of duality. If we get pulled over too much to either one of those sides, we do start to spin out of control, and we're not centered, we're not grounded, and we lose the beauty of the experience when we don't understand that the middle path is the way to go. I'm going to do an exercise with you in just a few moments. Let me just say hello to a couple of you. A few more popped up. I want to say hi to Becky and Letitia and Reverend, I hope I'm saying that, Maylet on YouTube. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. So going back to this idea of being overexcited or losing our ground, that middle way, losing our groundedness, losing our center, so to speak. The funny thing about the law of duality and the laws of polarity and opposites and whatnot is that, let me see what mine, I want to use a good example. Okay, my favorite one is that, let's say, for example, you're stressed out over a big decision you have to make, or you're dealing with, I don't know, legal issues or family issues, relationship issues, and you're kind of just spinning out. And, you know, me, I always fall back on the idea of my meditation during this time is usually grant me clarity, give me the clarity to see through this, to make the right decisions and whatnot. And the funny thing is that I've noticed is that the more I'm, and this is the key word here, grasping at clarity, the more confused I get. And this goes with most things when it comes to the law of duality. When you are desperate for peace, you're going to have chaos. When you're desperate for love and affection, you're going to have loneliness and chaos. When you're grasping, the harder you're reaching for the opposite of what you are experiencing, the more you're pulling in that which you are already experiencing. And this can be laid on top of that law of attraction that we all know all so well. This is kind of where the law of duality comes in that law of attraction definition or practice. So it's not about being an either or other extreme. It's not about grasping that other extreme. It's about remaining in that center no matter what's going on around you. I always say it's being the eye in the center of the hurricane, being the eye of the storm while the world is falling apart around you, finding that center. And I don't like to use the word keep, that wouldn't be the right word, expressing and experiencing your peace while all of this is happening around you. So I want to read to you this from the I hope I'm saying it right, Qabbalion. I've read it 1,000 times. I just never learned how to pronounce it. Qabbalion, maybe. Anyway, everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths, and all paradoxes may be reconciled. It's almost that, kind of like that story, well, not that story, the saying of, there's your story, their story, and somewhere in the middle is the truth. There's three stories, three sides to every story. And that's it. There's your experience, what you're not experiencing, and then somewhere in the middle is that eternal truth, that eternal essence. And we're going to get into that eternal essence now. So not all, you'll notice I'm talking about consciousness, and I'm talking about how we are experiencing different levels of consciousness. Now, in regards to this particular law of duality, now throughout your day, you are having several aspects of consciousness fluctuating throughout your day, right? In the morning, you're a different person than you are after you've had breakfast, after you've had lunch, after you get home from work, etc., getting ready for bed. You are experiencing different levels of consciousness throughout your day. But not all levels of consciousness are dualistic. There is one that transcends dualism. Some people call it unity consciousness. Some people call it supreme enlightenment. Some people call it nirvana. Many words for it. Completely, evolved. It's a place where there is no good, there is no bad. There is no hot. There is no cold. There is no up. There is no down. There is. That's it. There is. And what is. No judgment. No recalling. This is where our center lies. This is where our true power comes from. This is where, I call it connecting with your higher self is one way that I call it, one thing that I call it. It's aligning with your higher self to allow that source consciousness to flow through you. You can call it ki energy, prana, life force energy, creative energy. But it's the energy that has no judgment. It's that place, that awareness that has all awareness, but yet it has no purpose. But the fact it doesn't have a purpose, has no purpose, means nothing. Call it source, if you will. And going back to what we were talking about earlier, call it the Keter, the crown of the Tree of Life. Call it the One, which is what my entire book is based on. Call it God, Goddess, whatever it may be. Your Godhead, your Goddess head, your essence. One of the biggest memories I have, I don't know if I've mentioned this, maybe I mentioned it last week or the week before, but I've experienced nirvana 3 or 4 times in my life. And, we're human beings. We slide down the vibrational scale to be human again, because, once you're nirvana, there is nothing. The only way to stay in nirvana is if you're out of your body. And I like my body still. I have a good 40, 50 years I still want to use and eat and drink and be merry, so to speak. Be and experience my human self. But when I found myself slipping out of nirvana was when I started judging that state of consciousness. When I was in that state of mind, that state of consciousness, I was just. I wasn't saying, ooh, this is nirvana, or ooh, I feel good, or wow, I'm not thinking, because I wasn't thinking. I was between those thoughts. It's the moment that we begin to recall and compare that we begin to slip away from that unity consciousness. And that's not bad. See, that's the whole thing. It is not bad to be human, and it's one of my biggest hang-ups I get with people that are like, well, that's not very spiritual. What's spiritual? Spiritual doesn't mean not being human. Not being in unity consciousness just means that you're a human. No, we're not perfect. You're not supposed to be perfect. We're not supposed to judge ourselves or each other. And I don't even like that word, judge. The act of judging is a poor attempt of utilizing the law of duality. Let's just say that. It will do no one any good. Your path is your path. My path is my path. We all have our own timeline for how we evolve spiritually. But again, going back to what I was saying, that whole idea of, oh, well, this feels good. Oh, I acknowledge that I'm feeling. Oh, I'm acknowledging that I'm hungry. I'm acknowledging, the steps of slipping out of that nirvana only brings me back to being human, which is completely natural and completely fine. So I'm going to leave you with this little exercise. I've thought I wasn't going to be able to have enough material for a half-hour show, but here we go. We're already over time. I want you to do me a favor over the next several days or whatnot. I'll leave you with an assignment. How's that? We were just talking about different levels of consciousness throughout your day. So I'll give you an example. For me, in the morning, I'm cranky, get out of my way coffee guy. Then I have my first cup of coffee, and then I'm happy-go-lucky, excited, looking forward to the day guy. Then I'm hungry, I want a big breakfast before I work guy. And then I'm focused, work guy. Then I'm relaxing, leave me the F alone guy. Then I'm tired, it's time to go to bed guy. You understand what I'm saying? So these identities that we have throughout the day, because that's kind of what they are. An expression of consciousness is its own identity, if you want to look at it that way. So look at 4 to 6, but try to keep it even. 4 to 6 of those identities that you have throughout the day. And then, list them, write them down, or type them on your iPad or whatever you're using. And what I'd like you to do is kind of begin bringing them together. So, for example, and what I mean by bringing them together is condensing them. So, for example, my waking up, leave me alone until I have my coffee guy is the same as I'm tired, I'm going to sleep now guy. They're on the opposite end of the spectrum, but they're the same in nature, so to speak. So throughout your day, try to condense them, and then eventually bring them down to where there's 2. So 2 ways that you identify your levels of consciousness throughout the day. And then contemplate, meditate on, maybe next week we can do the actual meditation together. Meditate on, where does that come from? When these last 2 identities of who you feel you are, that you align with, when they join and become one, where does that go? What is behind that? And yes, of course, I'm talking about source consciousness, God consciousness, etc. The unity consciousness, the everything. Anyway, I hope I've given you some food for thought. I hope you enjoyed our discussion this week. And again, I want to thank you so much for joining me. Next week, we are going to be talking about the law of synchronicity. That's actually one of my favorite laws, and I think you're going to enjoy it. We're going to talk about the law of synchronicity and probably go into a couple more laws. I won't go too much into the law of attraction. Everybody knows about that one. Maybe we'll touch on it a little bit. As well, please, if you enjoy my show, if you enjoy what I do, please join me here on YouTube. Join and become a monthly subscriber. I think it's like $2.99 or something. Or on Facebook, or on Patreon. I'm just doing the bills, and I'm like, the show is not paying for itself. So right now I'm paying out of pocket, and I need a little bit of help every month. But I appreciate everything. Like the show, like the page, share the show, share the channel, share the video, and I wish you all a very good week, and I will see you next week for the next show. Bye-bye.